The history of the Philadelphia Eagles begins in 1933. In that history, the Eagles have made his 4 Super Bowl appearances, losing his first 2, but winning his 3rd in 2018 and winning Super Bowl 15 his 4 times. I lost for the 2nd time. They have won 4 of the 5 NFL championships they have ever participated in, with their first 3 appearances coming back-to-back. The beginning era of Eagles history from 1933 to 1939 was influenced by owner and coach Bert Bell. After Bell sold the team to Alexis Thompson in 1940, the second era of the Eagles was primarily led by coach and future Hall of Famer Greasy Neal. Formation and early years. In 1931, Philadelphia's NFL franchise, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, which won the NFL championship in 1926, went bankrupt and ceased operations mid-season. After more than a year of searching for a suitable replacement, the NFL gave the expansion franchise to a syndicate led by former University of Pennsylvania teammates Rudd Ray and Bert Bell. In exchange for a $2,500 entry fee, the Bell-Ray Group acquired the assets of the failed Yellow Jackets organization. Drawing inspiration from the centerpieces of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal policy, particularly the Blue Eagle insignia of the National Recovery Act, Bell and Ray named the new franchise the Philadelphia Eagles, with Bell serving as president and general manager. Manager Ray became head coach. This makes it seem like the Yellow Jackets missed the 1932 season and returned with the Eagles in 1933, but that's not the case. The Eagles don't claim the history of the Yellow Jackets as their own, and the NFL officially equates the 2 franchises because of the aforementioned hiatus. The Eagles only inherited the NFL's rights to the Philadelphia area. Additionally, when Ray and Bell formed an almost entirely new team, he was the only player, Art Koninger, to come from the 1931 Yellow Jackets. The new team played its first game on October 15, 1933 at the Polo His grounds in New York City against the New York Giants. They lost the match 56-0. The Eagles largely struggled in their first decade. In 1935, Bell proposed an annual college draft to equalize talent across the league, which was dominated by the Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers, and New York Giants. From 1927 to his 1934, the Bears, Packers, and Giants won all but one title, the only exception being his 1928 Providence Steam as roller. The draft was a revolutionary concept in professional sports in which teams selected players in the reverse order of their standings on the standings, a practice that is still practiced today, giving every team a chance at the best colleges. We tried to raise the interest of fans by guaranteeing that they would be given talent. Sole owner and coach Bell, 1936 to 1939. Finishing last in the standings, the Eagles won the first pick in the 1936 draft and used the opportunity to pick Jay Berwanger, the University of Chicago's Heisman Trophy winning back. They then transferred his rights to the Chicago Bears. Berwanger had no interest in playing professional football, instead opting to go to medical school. The Eagles' first major recruiting success came in 1939 when he signed TCU All-American quarterback Davey O'Brien. In his rookie season, O'Brien went on to break numerous existing NFL passing records in a single season. That year, the Eagles played their first televised football game against the Brooklyn Dodgers at Ebbets Field, losing 23-14. Steelers and Eagles move 1940 to 1942. In 1940, the team moved from the Philadelphia Municipal Stadium to Shive Park. A half stake in Rudd Ray's team was bought by Art Rooney, who had just sold the Pittsburgh Steelers to Alexis Thompson. Soon after, Bell/Rooney and Thompson traded franchises, but not teams. The Bell/Rooney-led Eagles legal entity relocated to Pittsburgh, including most of the players. The Steelers' legal name remained the Philadelphia Football Club until 1945 and was led by Thompson. The Steelers moved to Philadelphia, leaving only the team's nickname, Original City. The NFL does not consider this a franchising, as the NFL franchise is a separate territorial right from an individual legal entity, and considers the current Philadelphia Eagles to be a single organization that has continued since his 1933. After taking over ownership, Thompson immediately hired Greasy Neal as the team's head coach. The Steagles, 1943. In 1943, there was a player shortage as most of the players were drafted for World War II. The Eagles then temporarily merged with the Steelers to ensure that both teams had enough players to play, forming a team known informally as the Steagles. The merger was subsequently dissolved after the season ended. 1944 to 1949. In 1944, the Eagles elected running back Steve Van Buren to the Hall of Fame. The Eagles, led by Van Buren and Neal, became competitors for the first time. The Eagles became the first independent team to win the championship in 1944. After two more second-place finishes, 1945 and 1946, the Eagles advanced to their first NFL title fight in 1947. However, the team fell back in the league at the time. The Chicago Cardinals won 28-21 at Comiskey Park in Chicago. The Eagles faced the Cardinals again in the 1948 championship, winning 7-0. The Eagles then returned to the NFL championship game for the third consecutive year, defeating the Los Angeles Rams 14-0. In 1948, the Eagles won 3 of 8 games in 36 days, 45-0. Thompson's final draft pick was Chuck Bednarik with the first overall pick in the 1949 NFL Draft. An All-American lineman and linebacker from the University of Pennsylvania, Bednarik would go on to become one of the greatest and most beloved players in Eagles history. For the 1949 season, the team was sold by Thompson to a syndicate of 100 buyers known as the Happy Hundreds, with each buyer paying a $3,000 commission for the team's share. The leader of the Happy Hundred was known as Philadelphia businessman James P. Clark, but another investor was Leonard Toews, who later became the company's owner. Flip-flopping fortunes in the Van Brocklin era, 1950 to 1959. At the turn of the decade, the team's fortunes changed again. The Eagles were scheduled to open the 1950 season against the AFC champion Cleveland Browns, who had just joined the NFL. The Eagles were expected to give the Browns, widely regarded as a lower league powerhouse at the time, a short stint. But the Browns shined in the Eagles' signature defense in a 35-10 rout, gaining 487 total yards, including 246 passing yards. The Eagles never recovered and finished 6-6. Neal retired after the season and was replaced by Bo McMillin. 2 games into the season, McMillan was forced to retire due to terminal stomach cancer. Wayne Milner finished the season before being replaced by Jim Trimble. The surviving teams of the great teams of the 1940s managed to stay competitive through the first few years of the decade, and though young players like Bobby Walston and Sonny Jurgensen provided the occasional talent, the 1950s. What the team lacked for most of the time was mediocre. The Eagles considered buying Temple Stadium in 1952 when the team was dissatisfied with the Shibe Park lease. Temple University claimed the property was valued at $1 million and said it was not interested in selling it. But in 1958, the team took significant steps to improve, hiring Buck Shaw as head coach and acquiring Norm Van Brocklin in a trade with the Los Angeles Rams. That year, the team moved from Connie Mack Stadium, formerly Shibe Park, to Franklin Field, doubling attendance. The 1959 team finished second in the Eastern Division that year. 1960. 1960 remains the most celebrated year in Eagles history. Shaw, Van Brocklin, and Chuck Bednarik, each in their last season before retirement, were teams notable for their grit rather than their talent. One observer later said the team had nothing but championships. Ironically, to their first division title since 1949. The team was aided by 2 Pro Bowl receivers, W.R. Tommy McDonald, who would later write a short autobiography titled They Pay Me to Catch Football, and T.E. Pete Retzlaff, was taken. On December 26, 1960, one of the coldest days in Philadelphia history, the Eagles faced Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers in the NFL title game, giving the mighty Lombardi the only win in his storied career. Lost in the championship game. Bednarik lined up as a center on offense and a linebacker on defense. Fittingly, the match ended as Bednarik tackled a struggling Jim Taylor and didn't allow him to get up until the final seconds had passed. Bedlam in Philadelphia, 1961 to 1969. In 1961, the Eagles went 10-4 to lead the Eastern Conference standings, half a game behind the New York Giants. Despite his success on the field, the franchise was in turmoil. Ben Brocklin came to Philadelphia and agreed to play until 1960, with the tacit understanding that he would succeed Shaw as head coach when he retired as a player. However, the ownership chose to promote assistant Nick Skorich instead, and Van Brocklin left the organization in frustration and became the new Minnesota Vikings head coach instead. In 1962, the team was devastated by injuries, winning just 3 games and losing 49 at home to the Packers. The off-field turmoil continued until 1963, when the remaining 65 shareholders of the original Happy 100 outnumbered the team to local bidders, paying an unprecedented $5.5 million to Washington billionaire developers. Sold the team to Jerry Woolman, 36, for club control. In 1964, Woolman hired former Cardinals and Washington Redskins coach Joe Kaharich to a 15-year contract. Many criticized Kaharich as a coach for wasting top talent such as Jurgensen, Timmy Brown, Ollie Matson, and Ben Hawkins and effectively crippling the team. At Kaharich's insistence, Jurgensen was traded to the Washington Redskins in 1964 for Norm Snead. Jurgensen would go on to a Hall of Fame career, while Snead, while capable, lacked the talent to lift a team from mediocrity. By 1968, the fans had rebelled in earnest. Chants of "Joe must go" echoed through the increasingly empty seats at Franklin Field. In addition to the injury, the Eagles were able to win 2 of the final 3 games of the season meaningless, and the team lost the number 1 draft pick, thereby giving O.J. lost. The Eagles picked Leroy Keys as the number 2 pick, who played in an Eagles uniform for just 4 years. The final game of 1968, the Philadelphia Eagles' 2016 NBA Finals, was played on December 15, 1968. The Santa Claus incident cemented the violent reputation of Philadelphia fans. Some even booed and threw snowballs at Eagles fans playing as Santa Claus. By 1969, Woolman had lost most of his property and was bankrupt, and the franchise was placed under the custody of the federal bankruptcy court. At the end of bankruptcy proceedings, the Eagles were sold to trucking billionaire and original Happy 100 member Leonard Toews. Toews' first official act was to dismiss Kaharich. Gaining a reputation as a swift great, Toews infused the organization with much-needed confidence. Initially, however, he ran the team with more enthusiasm than his ability, as evidenced by his selection of the ill-fated Jerry Williams to replace Kaharich. Toews also elected former Eagles great Pete Retzlaff as general manager. From hopeless to hopeful, 1970 to 1979. In 1971, the Eagles moved from Franklin Field to the brand-new Veterans Stadium. In its first season, that was widely hailed as a triumph of ultramodern sports engineering, but that consensus didn't last long. Similarly, Williams' tenure as head coach was short-lived. After a 3-10-1 record in 1970 and 3 straight losses to Cincinnati, Dallas, and San Francisco before the start of the 1971 season, Williams was sacked and replaced by assistant Ed Cahill, defensive lineman for the 1960 NFL champion team of the Eagles. Williams and Cahill were hampered by Retzlaff's decision to trade longtime starting quarterback Noam Snead to the Minnesota Vikings in early 1971, leaving the Eagles to choose between craftsman Pete Risk and raw Rick Arrington was to be selected. Cahill lost his first 2 games, but won 6 of his final 9 games in 1971, recording 11 interceptions and an interception, thanks to a strong defense led by All-Pro safety Bill Bradley. He led the NFL in return yards, 248. The team retreated in 1972, and Cahill was released after the Eagles finished 2-11-1. But his 2 wins, both on the road, came as a surprise. 6 field goals from kicker Tom Dempsey helped Philadelphia beat Kansas City, who had the best record in the AFC the previous year, 21-20, while Houston won 18-17. The latter match became known as the Johnny Rodgers Bowl. That's because the loser would finish the league's worst record and secure the first pick in the 1973 draft, which at the time was supposed to be Nebraska wingback Johnny Rodgers. The Oilers ended up with the number 1 pick, but were replaced by University of Tampa defensive end John Matsack, who would face Philadelphia in the Super Bowl a few years later. The Eagles took USC tight end Charles Young with the 2nd overall pick. Cahill was replaced by offensive guru Mike McCormick. He managed to breathe some life into a moribund offense, aided by the skills of Roman Gabriel and young receiver Harold Carmichael. New general manager Jim Murray also began adding talent to the defensive end of the line through the addition of future Pro Bowl linebacker Bill Bergey. Overall, however, the team was still in a mediocre situation. McCormick was fired after a 4-10 season in 1975 and was replaced by a college coach unknown to most people in Philadelphia. That coach would go on to become one of the most beloved names in Philadelphia sports history, Dick Vermeil. Vermeil faced many obstacles in trying to revitalize a franchise that had not been seriously contested for over a decade. Despite the team's young talent and Gabriel's occasional brilliance, the Eagles finished 1976 with the same 4-10 record as in 1975. But in 1977, the first seeds of hope began to sprout. Rifle-toting quarterback Ron Jaworski was acquired in a trade with the Los Angeles Rams in exchange for popular tight end Charlie Young. The defense, led by Bergey and defensive coordinator Marion Campbell, began to earn a reputation as one of the league's hardest hitters. By the following year, the Eagles had fully embraced Vermeil's enthusiasm and made the playoffs for the first time since 1960. Young running back Wilbert Montgomery became the first Eagle since Steve Van Buren to exceed 1,000 yards in a single season. 1978 witnessed one of the greatest and arguably the most surreal moments in Eagles history, Miracle in the Meadowlands, near the end of the game, when Giants quarterback Joe Pisarcik fumbled to Herman Edwards. By 1979, the Eagles were tied for first place with an 11-5 record, and Wilbert Montgomery shattered the club with a record 1,512 total yards. And the Eagles are poised to join the ranks of the NFL elite. 1980. In 1980, a team led by coach Dick Vermeil, quarterback Ron Jaworski, running back Wilbert Montgomery, wide receiver Harold Carmichael, and linebacker Bill Bergey won the NFC. They faced their biggest nemesis in the NFC Championship, the Dallas Cowboys. The game was played in cold weather in front of loyal Birds fans at Veterans Stadium. The long cutback TD run in the first half is arguably one of the most memorable plays in Eagles history, with Montgomery's incredible rushing performance and guts from fullback Leroy Harris, who scored the Eagles' only TD that day. Led by a flurry of performances, the Birds won 20-7 and qualified for Super Bowl 15. The Eagles traveled to New Orleans for Super Bowl 15 on January 25, 1981, and were the frontrunners to defeat the simple wild card team, the Oakland Raiders. Things didn't go the way the Eagles had hoped, beginning with Toz's disastrous decision to bring comedian Don Rickles into the locker room before the game to lighten the mood. Uwolski's first pass was intercepted by Rod Martin to set up a touchdown for Oakland. Late in the first quarter, a potentially game-deciding 40-yard touchdown pass to Rodney Parker was ruled out for an illegal motion penalty, and the Raiders quickly marched down the field to score again, leading to a score at halftime. Went 14-3. The Eagles finally scored a touchdown early in the fourth quarter, but their hopes of a comeback were dashed on the ensuing drive when Uwolski intercepted for the third time of the day. The final score was 27-10. Veteran journeyman quarterback Jim Plunkett was named MVP of the game. In a strange coincidence, Joe Kaharich died on the same day. 1981 to 1985. The Eagles got off to a great start to the 1981 season, winning the first 6 games. They ended up with a 10-6 record, earning a wild card spot. However, he was eliminated by the New York Giants 27-21 in the wild card round and was never recaptured as the NFC champion. After the Eagles finished the strike-shortened 1982 season with a 3-6 record, Vermeil left the team, citing burnout. He was replaced by defensive coordinator Marion Campbell, also known as the Swamp Fox. Campbell helped popularize the bend but don't break defensive strategy in his 1970s. However, while the team struggled under Campbell, his managerial successes were notable for producing 2 of the greatest footballers of all time, defensive end Reggie White and quarterback Randall Cunningham. In the 1983-85 season, the Eagles went 5-11, 6-9-1, and 7-9, respectively, with Marion Campbell fired in Week 16 and assistant head coach and defensive backs coach Fred Bruni at the end of the season was entrusted to that same year. Toes reportedly paid $65 million, equivalent to $154,515,780 today, to repay more than $25,000 to highly successful Florida-born auto dealers Norman Brayman and Ed. He was forced to sell the Eagles to Leibovitz. Gambling liabilities at Atlantic City casinos amounted to $1 million, equivalent to $59,429,146 today. 1986 to 1988. Campbell's misguided reign ended in 1986 with the appointment of Buddy Ryan as head coach. His tough demeanor soon permeated the team, and the Eagles soon became known for their tough defense and tough personality. Ryan began rejuvenating the team by releasing several older players, including Ron Jaworski. Randall Cunningham was replaced and began to show considerable potential despite a 5-10-1 season. There was another strike in 1987, which shortened the season by one game. Substitutes for the striker performed poorly in a crushing 41-22 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. After the strike ended, the regular Eagles team won their revenge game against Dallas, 37-20. The season record was 7 wins and 8 losses, and he was a substitute in 3 games. The Eagles made the playoffs in 1988, but lost 20-12 to the Chicago Bears in a tournament known as the Fog Bowl due to weather conditions during the game. 1989-90. They would make the playoffs for the next 2 years, but the team failed to make it through the first round. The failure was very frustrating for many Eagles fans, as the team was generally regarded as one of the most talented teams in the NFL. The Eagles' offense was led by quarterback Cunningham, one of the most exciting players of his generation, tight end Keith Jackson, and running back Keith Byers. The defense is widely regarded as one of the greatest players in league history and the greatest player to ever fail to win a championship. The 2 games against Dallas in 1989 were known as the Bounty Bowl. Both were easily won by the Eagles. The Cowboys finished 1-15 that year, with Ryan insulting new Cowboys manager Jimmy Johnson, placing a prize money on the kicker, and Eagles fans ending the season. Actions such as throwing snowballs at people were conspicuous. On November 12, 1990, in a Monday Night Football game at Vet, the Eagles defeated the Washington Redskins by a score of 28-14 as the defense scored 3 of the team's 4 touchdowns. More lopsided than the score indicated, the match quickly earned the nickname the Body Bag Game and proved that the tougher Eagles team did physical damage. The Eagles knocked out Washington's starting quarterback, after which the replacement quarterback was also seriously injured. Running back Brian Mitchell, who would later sign with the Eagles, was forced to play quarterback for the Redskins. Unfortunately, the Redskins returned to Veterans Stadium in the first round of the playoffs, defeating the Eagles 20-6 to finish the season. Buddy Ryan was fired after the season ended. Despite his harsh words, the Eagles have failed to win a playoff game in the 5 years he has been head coach. Kotite and Rhodes, 1991-1998. 1999-2002. The revival would come under the leadership of new head coach Andy Reid, who began by picking Syracuse QB Donovan McNabb with the 2nd overall pick in the 1999 draft. The Eagles have the 1st pick, but given to the rebooted Cleveland Browns. Despite releasing unpopular and aging veterans, such as Waters and Irving Fryer, to make room on the roster for new talent, Reid was still virtually unknown when he was selected as head coach, and his appointment was met with considerable skepticism in Philadelphia. McNabb wasn't considered a good draft pick by Eagles fans either. When he was drafted, many Eagles fans booed the nomination, believing the Eagles should draft Ricky Williams. But with Reid leading the way and McNabb emerging as one of the game's greats, the choice proved wise. But 1999 was a year of rebuilding, so the Eagles won just 5 games, 2 home games didn't sell out, and the local TV went out, leaving the remaining 6 to blame for some small businesses. Attendance at the match remained low as it was only sold out. Owners buy unsold tickets to help TV viewers. On Sunday, October 10, 1999, in Week 5 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Eagles fans stood up and cheered as Dallas WR Michael Irvin suffered a career-ending spinal cord injury. Raised. Television commentators also expressed disgust at the act. In the 2000 season, the team entered the playoffs as a wild card with his 11-5 record, rejuvenating the fan base and optimism. After defeating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 21-3, the Eagles advanced to the second round of the playoffs, but lost to the Giants 20-10. His 2000 regular in Dallas, his season opener, September 3rd, has become known among NFL legends as Pickles' his juice game. Kickoff temperatures at Texas Stadium rose from 109 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 120 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the hottest game in league history and surpassing the record set during the 1997 Cowboys-Cardinals game in Arizona. The nickname comes from how one Eagles trainer prepared for the expected heat by having his players drink jars of dill pickle to keep their bodies hydrated and prevent cramps and heat exhaustion. It comes from the experiment proved successful as the Cowboys lost the game 44-14 and multiple players sat on the bench due to the extreme temperatures. The Eagles had none. The game was also significant in that it marked the beginning of Philadelphia's NFC East dominance and the end of the Cowboys' dominance. After an 11-5 record in 2001, the Eagles made the playoffs again, this time topping their division. In a near-repeated game from the previous year, they beat the Buccaneers 31-9. In the second round, the Eagles beat the Bears 33-19 at Soldier Field. They advanced to the NFC Championship game but were unable to stop the St. Louis Rams, who won 29-24. Despite his injury, McNabb led the Eagles to a 12-4 season in 2002. The Eagles reached the NFC Championship again, but lost 27-10 at home to the eventual Super Bowl winners, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in the final game at Veterans Stadium. 2003. The 2003 team lost their first two games at their new home. In the opening game of the 2003 season, the Eagles shut out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 17-0 in the first ever regular season game at Lincoln Financial Field. Again, the team went 12-4 on the season. By advancing to the conference championship game in the same year as this loss, they became the first team in modern history to reach that far in the postseason after shutting out their opening game at home. They achieved the accolade after only 5 touchdown catches from wide receivers over the course of the year. It tied the league's lowest record since the 1978 regular season schedule was extended to its current 16 games. A record would be broken in 2004 when New York hosted a Giants wide receiver. He caught only 2 touchdown passes. The Eagle receiver went through both September and October without a TD catch. The last time an NFL team made a TD catch was in 1945. 2004 Super Bowl run. The Eagles aggressively pursued premier wide receiver Terrell Owens and acquired him on March 16, 2004 in a controversial 3-way deal with the Baltimore Ravens and San Francisco 49ers. Owens often feuded with McNabb, after which he was released by the Eagles. 2005 season. The 2004 season got off to a strong start with Owens catching 3 touchdown passes from McNabb in the season opener against the New York Giants. Owens would end up with 1,200 receiving yards and 14 receiving touchdowns, but his season ended prematurely on December 19th with an ankle injury against the Dallas Cowboys. A 12-7 victory in that game gave them home field advantage for the 3rd year in a row through the conference playoffs. This distinction also includes byes in the first round of the playoffs, also known as the wild card round, which the top 2 teams in each conference receive. The Eagles tied the record by winning the NFC East crown. In just his 11th game of the season, his 4th consecutive title win, he tied the record set by the 1985 Chicago Bears and the 1997 San Francisco 49ers. The final 2 games of the regular season were thus meaningless, as the Eagles sat out most of their first team players in those games and lost both, but finished with a 13-3 record, the best in 16-game season history. McNabb had his best season to date, accumulating 3,875 passing yards and 31 touchdowns with just 8 interceptions. This made him the first quarterback in NFL history to throw 30 or more TD passes and less than 10 interceptions during the regular season. They then got off to a playoff start in the divisional round at home against the number 6 seeded Minnesota Vikings. The Eagles led early and never looked back. McNabb led a very efficient passing attack, 286 yards and 21 of 33, 2 TDs. Brian Westbrook dominated the ground with 70 rushing yards. and Freddie Mitchell had a great performance on the ground. Showed. He recorded a receiving core, 5 receptions for 65 yards, 1 touchdown, and Philadelphia won 27-14 to secure their 4th consecutive NFC Championship appearance. The Eagles' incompetence in the conference championship game had become notorious. In 2002, the Eagles lost 29-24 to the Rams in the NFC Championship game in St. Louis. In 2003, the Eagles faced the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Veterans Stadium and were widely viewed as overwhelming favorites. This view was undoubtedly underscored by the emotional surge that many expected would power the team, considering it was his last game with the Eagles. Veterinarian. But after an auspicious start, the game faltered, and the ensuing 27-10 loss devastated a fan base already accustomed to disappointment. In 2004, a strong Eagles team overcame a number of injuries, especially defensively, to reach the NFC Championship for the 3rd year in a row, but suffered a heartbreaking 14-3 loss to the Carolina Panthers. 4th championship appearance. On January 23, 2005, the Eagles reached their 4th consecutive conference championship game, the first in the NFL's salary cap era. The Eagles finally lived up to the expectations of their longtime fan base, defeating manager Michael Vick's much-touted Atlanta Falcons 27-10 to advance to their first Super Bowl number 39 in 24 years in Jacksonville, Florida. Played in the Super Bowl twice. The victory sent the city of Philadelphia into a frenzied celebration. Super Bowl 39. 2 Super Bowl wins put the defending champion New England Patriots in a very strong position. McNabb had a great game with 357 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also had 3 interceptions. Terrell Owens returned despite his injury, catching 9 for 122 yards. The game struggled defensively through the 3rd quarter, but the Patriots took the lead in the 4th, leaving the Eagles behind by 10 points. A struggle early in the game left everyone exhausted, and McNabb worked hard to score a touchdown, but failed to get his team into field goal range on the final drive. He was picked off near the end of the game. The final score was 24-21, giving the Patriots their 3rd Super Bowl title in 4 years. 2005. 2006. In 2006, the Eagles got off to a strong start by beating the Houston Texans 24-10 in Houston. And they continued their winning streak, taking a 24-7 lead against the Giants before losing 30-24 in overtime. They won the next 2 games easily, beating the 49ers in San Francisco and coming home to hold Brett Favre's Packers to 3 field goals. The Birds' 3-1 record paved the way for Terrell Owens' return to Philadelphia. Owens' return to Philadelphia was being promoted as the Game of the Year by Fox. The match was in greater jeopardy as the winner would take the lead in the NFC East. Owens was booed and joked by the packed crowd about his accidental overdose. Lito Shepherd's touchdown interception gave the game the win, and the Eagles closed the game 38-24. McNabb's season was already considered one of the greatest in Eagles history and career. After defeating the Owens-led Cowboys, they faced the upstart New Orleans Saints, with critics arguing that the winner would be an NFC favorite. The Eagles lost 27-24 on a final 2-second field goal. The next week in Tampa, the Eagles would lose again on the last second field goal. This time, Matt Bryant's 62-yard field goal was the 2nd longest in NFL history. A week before the bye, the Eagles lost a touchdown to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 13-6. After the bye, they took out the Redskins, and Reed/McNabb not only remained perfect after the bye week, but also got back on track after 3 straight losses. The Birds were in good form heading into a game against Vince Young's Titans, but were underwhelmed throughout the game, losing 31-13. But the bigger loss was Donovan McNabb, who suffered a season-ending injury for the 2nd year in a row. With Donovan McNabb injured, the Eagles asked Jeff Garcia to lead the team. The move was highly unpopular as fans believed AJ's actions. Feely was the best bet. After losing to Peyton Manning's Indianapolis Colts, the Eagles went 5-6 and didn't appear to be in playoff contention. But Garcia led the team to a 5-game winning streak, including a 3-game NFC East trip and a Christmas showdown in Dallas. The Eagles finished the season with a 10-6 record, but lost to the Saints in a tiebreaker, leaving them the 3rd seed. The Eagles faced the Giants in a wild-card game at home, winning 23-20 on a field goal from David Akers. This match officially marked Tiki Barber's retirement. Their divisional playoff game was a Week 6 rematch against the Saints. The Eagles lost by the same score as the regular season, 27-24. Andy Reid made a controversial decision to punt with less than 2 minutes remaining. 2007. 2007 marked the Eagles' 75th season. The Eagles drafted quarterback Kevin Kolb from Houston, hinting at the possibilities of a life other than McNabb. McNabb had an average performance but missed 3 games due to injury. The team finished with 8 wins and 8 losses, missing out on the playoffs by 1 game. 2008. Early 2008 was a good time for the Eagles. Donovan McNabb got off to a good start to the season. Brian Westbrook scored a slew of touchdowns, and rookie receiver Deshaun Jackson was a key figure in the Eagles' passing game. However, the Eagles faced the 1-8 Bengals in Week 10, and McNabb put up a lousy performance, throwing consistent interceptions, and trailed the Eagles to 10 points in the first half. Despite scoring 10 points, the game went into overtime. A missed field goal by the Bengals gave the Eagles a ball, but McNabb's Hail Mary missed with seconds left in overtime, ending the game in a 13-13 tie for the first time since 2002. McNabb then controversially admitted he didn't know. It was believed that NFL games could end in a draw. Things got even worse against Baltimore. A poor performance at halftime forced McNabb to sit on the bench. But the Eagles need him, and it will become clear. His backup Kevin Kolb managed to get the Eagles to the Baltimore 2-yard line. He then threw an interception in the end zone, returned by Ed Reed, and scored a record 107-yard touchdown. By this point, it was clear the Eagles needed a good quarterback for next week's matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. It looked poised to win that division for the first time in decades. The game is scheduled for Thanksgiving night, and Donovan McNabb was eventually confirmed to start, but if he's played like he's done in recent weeks, he'll probably be on the bench this season. We'll be going in. But McNabb surprised everyone, leading the Eagles to perhaps one of the greatest games in franchise history, a 48-21 crushing loss in which McNabb threw 4 touchdowns. The Eagles beat the Giants and Browns to extend their 3rd straight win following the Cardinals' victories. The Eagles then lost 10-3 to a mediocre Redskins team at best, raising serious questions about their postseason prospects. On December 28, 2008, the Eagles need the Oakland Raiders 4-11 to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 9-6 and the Minnesota Vikings 9-6, lose to the New York Giants 12-3, had to. The Chicago Bears 8-7, lost to the Houston Texans 7-8, and the Eagles needed to beat the Cowboys at 4 o'clock. But the Eagles, who got the help they needed earlier in the day, defeated the Dallas Cowboys 44-6 to advance to the playoffs. The Raiders came from behind after losing 24-14, and before the Eagles-Cowboys game, the game was televised and watched by Eagles fans at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles then defeated the Minnesota Vikings 26-14 in the first round of the playoffs on January 4, 2009. They qualified for the finals after defeating district rivals and defending Super Bowl champions New York Giants 23-11 in the NFC Division Round, 5th NFC Championship game in 9 years. With the Pittsburgh Steelers winning the AFC Championship against the Baltimore Ravens, it seemed possible to host an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl for the 3rd time in a decade. However, the Eagles lost to the Arizona Cardinals 32-25. 2009. In August, the team controversially signed former Falcons quarterback Michael Vick, who was recently released on federal dogfighting charges. McNabb broke a rib in the regular season opener against Carolina and missed the next 2 games, replaced by Kevin Kolb as the starter. Philadelphia then suffered a crushing loss to New Orleans, but beat Kansas City the following week. McNabb is back and Vick has started playing because he was banned from the first 2 games. He had a slow start and was underused for most of the season. After losing 13-9 in Oakland, the Eagles beat the Redskins 27-17 on Monday Night Football. During the game, running back Brian Westbrook suffered a severe concussion and was knocked unconscious. He returned to play in Week 10 against San Diego, but collapsed from his second concussion. Philadelphia then went on a 5-game winning streak, beating the Broncos in Week 16 to qualify for the playoffs and returning Brian Westbrook after a 5-week hiatus. However, the next week, The team was shut out by the revived Cowboys team, and the season ended with a scream. This gave Dallas the lead in the NFC East and a wild card spot for the Eagles. Both teams then had to play again the following week, but Philadelphia suffered a second loss by a score of 34-14. 2010, 2011, Dream Team. The off-season was marred by a lockout that began in March after the NFL's labor contract expired, making practice, trade, and free agency impossible. The Eagles did relatively little during the draft. Once the lockout ends in July, the team will have Raiders cornerback Nnamdi Asomugha, Dolphins running back Ronnie Brown, Giants wide receiver Steve Smith, Packers tight end Donald Lee, and Titans defense. Signs of high-profile free agents, such as Jason Babin, skyrocketed. Packers defensive tackle Karen Jenkins and Cardinals cornerback Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. Meanwhile, Kevin Kolb, frustrated at losing the starting quarterback to Michael Vick in 2010, was traded to Arizona for Rodgers-Cromartie. He was replaced by former Titans quarterback Vince Young as the second stringer. Young touted the Eagles as a dream team won. The Eagles won the 2011 season opener against the St. Louis Rams, but injuries and turnovers to Michael Vick prevented the dream team from delivering results. The Eagles have lost 4 in a row. Vince Young took over as manager, and the Eagles finally defeated the Washington Redskins in Week 6. Vick returned in Week 8 and helped the team defeat the Dallas Cowboys 34-7 at home. After further losses to the Chicago Bears and Arizona Cardinals, the Eagles defeated the New York Giants, and after losses to the New England Patriots and Seattle Seahawks, won their final 4 games to finish 8-8. 2012, end of the Reid era. The Eagles entered 2012 with high hopes after winning the final 4 games of last season. As the team started 3-1, including a 24-23 victory over the eventual Super Bowl champions Baltimore Ravens, fans were thinking about the playoffs and even the Super Bowl. However, those hopes were dashed as the team dropped the next 8 and 11 of the next 12 games to finish 4-12, their worst record since 1998. Nick Foles stepped up after Michael Vick was injured against the Dallas Cowboys in Week 10, made its Philadelphia debut. In Week 14 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, rookie quarterback Nick Foles led the offense with a game-winning touchdown drive and threw a touchdown to Jeremy Maclin with 1 second left in the game to record his first win for the Eagles. The Eagles have fired Andy Reid, the longest-serving and most winning coach in team history. Reid would later join the Kansas City Chiefs as head coach. 2013, immediate success. Following the dismissal of Andy Reid, Chip Kelly was named head coach of the Eagles on January 16, 2013, after 4 successful years on the University of Oregon sidelines. Kelly is known for his up-tempo approach to football, which has helped make the University of Oregon a leading college institution. In his first season in professional football, Kelly went 10-6 and won the NFC East, becoming just the second head coach in league history to win a division title in his first season in the NFL. Backup Nick Foles took over after Michael Vick was injured early in the season. Nick Foles surprised the NFL when he finished the season with 27 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions in one game with the Oakland Raiders, tying the NFL record for throwing 7 touchdowns in one game. Along the way, the Eagles set numerous team records, including points scored, 442, total net yards, 6,676, touchdowns, 53, passing yards, 4,406, and least turnovers, 19. The Eagles also set an NFL record with 99 plays of 20 or more yards, becoming the first team since the Buffalo Bills in 1991 to lead the league in rushing while having the lowest possession time. Individually, RB LeSean McCoy set franchise records for rushing yards and scrimmage yards in a season in 2013, and QB Nick Foles earned the 3rd-best QB rating in NFL history in 2013. By Week 17, the Cowboys and Eagles division battle had reached its climax. Sunday night's Eagles-Cowboys game in Dallas is a must-win, winner takes all, loser goes home. After a hard-fought game, with 2 minutes left in the game, the Cowboys held the ball by 2 points. However, just before a potentially game-deciding drive, cornerback Brandon Boykin intercepted an underthrowing pass to seal the match and division win. The Eagles made it to the playoffs for the first time since 2010. However, they didn't get that far after losing to the New Orleans Saints in the wild card round of the playoffs. Just before the end of the game, the time was up after a 7-minute drive, and the Saints scored the game-winning field goal. 2014. Dominance then collapse. In 2014, after what seemed like a successful first year for Chip Kelly, much was expected of the team. The Eagles started off as a force to be reckoned with, going 6-2 with both losses on the way and ending with a failed red zone attempt on the game-deciding touchdown. However, Nick Foles' 2014 season ended when he broke his collarbone in Week 9's victory over the Houston Texans. Mark Sanchez will take over with the Eagles for the rest of the season. They crumbled from a 9-3 record near the end of the season to 10-6 again, but lost the district to the Dallas Cowboys and missed the playoffs due to a tiebreaker. The Eagles defeated the Cowboys on Thanksgiving to put them in a good position to win the division, but then lost 2 games to the Seahawks and at home to the Cowboys, giving the Cowboys the lead in the division. Philadelphia had the 6th best record in the NFC, but the 10-6 Eagles won the playoffs as the NFC South winners. The 7-8-1 Carolina Panthers qualified for the division championship playoffs. Deviated from 2015. End of Chip Kelly era. The 2015 season gave Chip Kelly full control, which he used to revamp the roster to his liking. Attackers such as LeSean McCoy, Jeremy Maclin, Nick Foles, and Evan Mathis were either traded, let go, or never resigned, often to the dismay of Eagles fans. The Eagles' new quarterback was Sam Bradford. In a surprise free agency deal, Chip Kelly also acquired last season's rushing yards leader DeMarco Murray from rivals the Dallas Cowboys. LeSean McCoy was acquired from the Buffalo Bills in a trade for Kiko Alonso. A number of changes were made to the offense to better suit Chip Kelly's fast-paced offense. The new roster did not fare well as the Eagles went 7-9 and missed the playoffs, in part due to Sam Bradford's injury during a home game against the Dolphins in Week 9. Weeks 9-11 were supposed to be Philadelphia's easiest period of the season, with the Eagles versus the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, and the Thanksgiving Lions. Sam Bradford was sidelined with an injury in the third quarter of the Eagles' leading game against Miami, missing the rest of the game and the next 2 games. Mark Sanchez instead intercepted in the end zone and scored a potentially winning TD drive. Sanchez's offense exploded in the next 2 games, scoring just 17 points in each. Bradford returned in Week 12, beating the front-runner New England Patriots away. Kelly was sacked as head coach with 1 game left in the season. 2016. Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson's first year. After Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson was announced as head coach on January 18, 2016, making him the NFL's first head coach. The Eagles exchanged the number 2 overall draft pick for North Dakota State quarterback Carson Wentz in the 2016 NFL Draft. The season got off to a strong start with a 3-0 start for the Eagles. Doug Peterson became the first head coach in franchise history to win the first 3 games. But Carson Wentz's underarms and inexperience caught up, and the Eagles went 4-9 in their final 13 games, finishing 7-9 again and missing out on the playoffs. 2017. First Super Bowl championship. During the offseason, a number of changes were made to the receiving core and running back positions to help Wentz. It worked out, and the Eagles climbed to the top of the NFL with a 13-3 record, winning the NFC East Championship for the first time since 2013 and earning a first-round bye for the first time since the 2004 season. When did they last go to the Super Bowl? Carson Wentz improved dramatically during the season, throwing 33 touchdowns and just 7 interceptions. But his season as a potential MVP ended in Week 14 against the Los Angeles Rams, where he tore his anterior cruciate ligament and missed the rest of the season. After starting 1-1, winning the season opener against the Redskins and losing to the Chiefs in Week 2, the Eagles saw rookie kicker Jake Elliott throw the final second 61 yards in the home opener against the Giants. Field goals to win the game 27-24. It was the longest kick by a rookie and the longest kick by an Eagle in franchise history. The Eagles extended their winning streak to 9, proving their lead in the league until losing to the Seattle Seahawks in Week 13. Nick Foles, who returned to the Eagles after brief stints with the Rams, then St. Louis Rams, and Chiefs, coached by Andy Reid, will replace him. His erratic performance late in the regular season left the team behind in the playoffs despite being the #1 seed. The Eagles beat the Atlanta Falcons 15-10 in the divisional round for their first playoff victory since the 2008 season. The divisional game in Atlanta was fourth short of the goal line after Matt Ryan's pass, under Jalen Mills' cover, went through the hands of star Julio Jones and was stopped at first, second, and third. Ended with a down stop. The Eagles faced the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC Championship. The game was surprisingly close, with the Eagles overpowering the Vikings 38-7 to advance to the Super Bowl for the first time since the 2004 season. The Eagles will face Tom Brady's New England Patriots in Super Bowl II in a rematch of Super Bowl 39. The Eagles ultimately won the game 41-33, giving the Eagles their first Super Bowl victory and their first since the 1960 season before the NFL and AFL merged. Nick Foles will be named Super Bowl MVP. See Super Bowl 52, 2018. Attempting to repeat. The Eagles returned from a successful 2017 season and were looking to win back-to-back Super Bowls for the first time since the New England Patriots in 2003 and 2004. A number of injuries plagued the team before the season began, including quarterback Carson Wentz, who is still recovering from an anterior cruciate ligament injury. Nick Foles was the season-opening starting quarterback, helping the team to an 18-12 victory over the Atlanta Falcons in the opening game. The season opener against Atlanta ended in a similar way to the previous year's division round matchup. An incomplete pass to Julio Jones in the end zone ended the game. A number of injuries plagued the team throughout the 2018 season, especially in the secondary, including Jalen Mills, Ronald Darby, and Rodney McLeod. The gratification of winning the franchise's first Super Bowl championship and fourth NFL championship took hold with the team and fan base, and the tension was lacking early in the season. In many games early in the season, such as against Carolina and Tennessee, the Eagles took the lead late in the fourth quarter. The Eagles went 4-6 in their first 10 games and looked very unlikely to make the playoffs, but 5 of their final 6 included upset wins over the Rams and Texans. I managed to win and advance to 9th place. -7 to advance to the playoffs as the 6th seed. Carson Wentz was rushed back to playing too soon and was diagnosed with a stress fracture in his back after Week 14. Nick Foles again replaced Wentz later in the season. The Eagles-Texans victory in Week 16 was a close one. The Eagles had won most of the game, but collapsed towards the end of the fourth quarter, with the Texans taking the lead with minutes remaining. In the end, the Eagles cornered the field and Jake Elliott scored a field goal to win the game. That meant the Eagles would have to win in Washington in Week 17, and the Bears would have to beat the Vikings to qualify for the playoffs. The Eagles beat the Redskins and the Bears beat the Vikings. The Bears retained their starters throughout the game, but in the final stages of the game, win or lose, the third seed frame did not change. They did this because, among other reasons, they preferred to face the Eagles in the first round of the playoffs. In the wild card game against the Chicago Bears, Nick Foles had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in a 16-15 win. Bears kicker Cody Parkey missed the winning goal and hit the uprights and crossbar. The kick was also tilted slightly by Trayvon Hester, sending the Philadelphia Eagles to the NFC Divisional against the New Orleans Saints. In the NFC Divisional round game against the Saints, the Eagles finished the first quarter with a 14-0 lead. However, the offense was unable to score more as the defense put pressure on Nick Foles, and the Eagles ultimately lost 20-14 to the Saints, ending their chances of defending their Super Bowl title. The Eagles were making good progress down the field in an attempt to go on the field for the winning touchdown, but near the Saints' 20-yard line, Alshon Jeffrey put a pass through Marshawn Lattimore's arm. 2019, third consecutive playoff berth. Nick Foles left Philadelphia in the offseason to sign with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Eagles also traded Michael Bennett and a 2020 7th-round pick to the New England Patriots for a 2020 5th-round pick. One of the Eagles' most notable offseason additions was a trade to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to reacquire Deshaun Jackson. Other additions to the team included defensive tackle Malik Jackson and running back Jordan Howard. The Eagles got off to a head start in Week 1 against the Washington Redskins with Deshaun Jackson catching 2 touchdowns over 50 yards from Carson Wentz. However, the Eagles suffered a major offensive and defensive injury, dropping the next 2 games. They defeated the then undefeated Green Bay Packers in Week 4, the New York Jets the following week, and then lost to the Minnesota Vikings in Week 6. In Week 7, the Eagles lost a game in Dallas that could have given them an advantage domestically. Division. However, the Eagles won 2 in a row, one against Buffalo and another at home against the Chicago Bears. After the bye week, the Eagles faced the New England Patriots for the first time since Super Bowl 52. In a low-scoring game, the Eagles took an early 10-0 lead and lost 17-10. The following week, the Eagles lost 17-9 at home to the Seattle Seahawks in a game in which Carson Wentz lost with 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles. Based on records, the Eagles' last 5 games are the easiest in the NFL. But in the first of the final 5 games of Week 13, the Eagles lost 37-31 to the Dolphins, who went 2-9 in Miami. The Eagles led 14-28 in the third quarter, but the Dolphins couldn't hold the lead after only 1 punt in the second half. Over the next 2 weeks, the Eagles reversed from a 17-3 deficit at halftime, beat the Giants at home with a touchdown pass from Wentz to Ayrton overtime, and then Nigel Bradham's goal beat the Redskins to 37 in Washington. Beat 27 versus. A touchdown on a fumble return following a go-ahead touchdown pass by Greg Ward Jr. from Carson Wentz. In Week 16, the Eagles, who have lost their last 4 games to Dallas, faced the Cowboys in Philadelphia. The Eagles quickly won by 10 points, 17-9, and prevented the Cowboys from winning the league title. It was an important game against a longtime rival, and the Eagles had to beat the Giants 3-11 or the Cowboys lose to the Redskins to seal the NFC East title heading into Week 17. The Eagles went into Week 17 without main receiver Zach Ertz, who suffered a broken rib and a torn kidney after being hit in the first quarter against the Cowboys. Either way, the Eagles pulled the Giants apart in the third quarter with a touchdown after Fletcher Cox's fumble recovery. Backup RB Boston Scott scored 3 touchdowns to win 34-17, and the Eagles won the NFC East with a 9-7 record. The Eagles became the first team in NFL history to throw a quarterback for 4,000 yards or more without making a wide receiver catch for 500 yards or more in a season. Carson Wentz started in his first postseason game at home against the number 5 Seahawks. In the first quarter, Wentz suffered a concussion after being hit in the head by Jadeveon Clowney and missed the rest of the game. Backup Josh McCown replaced Wentz, making him the oldest quarterback to make the first playoff game. He led the offense with multiple drives into the end zone, but the offense was unable to pull off 2 red zone 4th downs in the red zone in a 9-17 loss. 2020, end of the Peterson-Wentz era. The Eagles started the 2020 season without spectators at home games due to the coronavirus pandemic. The season saw some notable changes to the roster, including the addition of controversial second-round draft pick Jalen Hurts and the withdrawal of free agency Nelson Agholor. The team was still plagued with numerous injuries and poor quarterback play throughout the year. The Eagles started Week 1 with a 17-0 lead against the Washington football team, formerly the Washington Redskins. The football team then had 27 unanswered points in the second half to start the Eagles with a 0-1 record. It was the first time since 2016 that the Eagles lost to a Washington football team. The next week, the Eagles lost 37-19 at home to the Rams. In Week 3, the Eagles were declared a false start penalty before attempting a 59-yard field goal and punted from the Bengals' own 46-yard line to tie the game at home with the Bengals. The Eagles faced the defensive NFC champs 49ers in San Francisco, winning 25-20 on Sunday night. The Eagles lost their next 2 games to the Steelers and Ravens, and by the end of both games they tried to come back against the favorites, but it wasn't enough to win. However, Travis Fulgham, who was out of practice in place of the injured receiver in those 3 games, emerged as the team's top receiver. In the Ravens' Week 6 game, the Eagles played just 2 expectedly healthy starters, Jason Kelce and Carson Wentz. Against the Giants in Week 7, the Eagles came from behind to win 22-21 after losing 21-10 with 6 minutes left in the game. Against the Cowboys in Week 8, despite Wentz's poor performance, the Eagles held on and beat the Cowboys 23-9 at home. But after the bye week, the Eagles struggled, going 1-7 in their final 8 games. The only win, during this period, came in Week 14 against the Saints, who were the favorites at home, 24-21, when Jalen Hurts replaced Carson Wentz as the starting quarterback. Wentz came off the bench midway through a Week 13 away game against the Green Bay Packers. On the bench, Wentz led the league in sacks, interceptions, and turnovers. After leading 14-3 at the end of the first quarter, the Eagles were eliminated from playoff contention for the first time since 2016, after a 37-17 loss to the Cowboys in Week 16. He then lost 20-14 at home to Washington in Week 17, finishing the season with 4 wins and 11-1, his worst record since 2012. And finally, on January 11, 2021, Peterson was ousted by the franchise, dismissed as head coach. His career record with the Eagles, including playoff appearances, was 46-39-1. Finally, on March 17, 2021, Wentz was traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2021 third-round pick and a 2022 conditional second-round pick, a new quarterback, and the playoffs 2021. The Eagles started the 2021 season with new quarterback starter Jalen Hurts and welcomed Nick Sirianni, who worked as an offensive coordinator at the Indianapolis Colts, to the Eagles as head coach for the first time in history. The team started 3-6, but by adopting a more run-oriented offense, they recovered and finished the season 9-8, reaching the playoffs for the 4th time in 5 years. However, they lost 31-15 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC wildcard round. A.J. Brown era, 2022. In the 2022 draft, the Eagles acquired star wide receiver A.J. Brown in a trade with the Titans. The Eagles advanced to the Super Bowl by defeating the San Francisco 49ers in a big win after the San Francisco 49ers lost QBs for 3 years in a row. Bibliography. Didinger, Ray. Lions, co-authored with Robert S. 2005. Eagles Encyclopedia. Philadelphia, Temple University Press. ISBN 1-59213-449-1 NFL Editor 2011. NFL Records and Fact Book 2011. Official National Football League Records and Fact Book. Time Home Entertainment. ISBN 978-1-60320-887-1. Further reading. The Eagles' record-setting game in 1934 was against the desperate Cincinnati Reds. Harold Clausen, Spike, 1963. The History of Professional Football. Inglewood Cliffs, NJ, Prentice Hall, Incorporated. Davis, Jeff, 2005. Papa Bear, The Life and Legacy of George Halas. New York, McGraw-Hill. ISBN 0-07-146054-3 Lyons, Robert S. 2010. A Given Sunday, The Life of Burt Bell. Philadelphia, Temple University Press. ISBN 978-1-59213-731-2 Michael McCambridge, 2005. American Game. New York, Anchor Books. ISBN 978-0-307-48143-6 Peterson, Robert W. 1997. Pigskin, The Early Days of Professional Football. New York, Oxford University Press. ISBN 0-19-507607-9 Rich Westcott, 2001. Philadelphia, His First Century in His Sport. Philadelphia, Temple University Press. ISBN 1-56639-861. For Willis, Chris, 2010. The Man Who Built the National Football League. Joe F. Carmel and Lanham. Scarecrow Press Incorporated. ISBN 978-0-8108-7669-9.